Becoming a narrator and learning the whole new world of audiobook narrating is an awesome journey for those that are getting into it. But it certainly has its challenges. To make it happen, you have to be consistent, learn the performance side of things, and the technical side of things. I want to find out the narrator's side of the story. I'm Ryan May, and in each episode of the Home Audio Podcast, I'm talking with a wide array of narrators in their adventures of doing just that. From veteran narrators to beginners just learning the trade, learning their strategies, their wins, and what's still ahead for them. When beginning the narrator journey, you usually start out by doing everything yourself before you outsource certain elements. From recording, editing, and mastering, they're all pieces of the puzzle. And if you've already started recording and editing, I want to help you on the mastering side of things. EQ is usually the tool that I use first. So I want to give you my narration EQ guide to help you get through each step of using EQ and enable you to get clarity and presence out of your voice. If you want to download this, you can just head to thehomeaudioproject.com/EQ and sign up there. As you'll hear in this podcast, there are tons of steps to take, but with drive, determination, and some bumps and bruises along the way, you can make it happen no matter what background you come from. Today's guest has become an awesome friend of mine, Dallas Britt. Dallas is a newer narrator, but if you Google his name, he's popping up and he's making waves to further his career as a narrator. As you'll learn in this podcast, he has an enthusiasm about him that just gives off an awesome energy and a positive mindset. And I love that he wants to bring back old-time storytelling. And I'm talking like classic cowboys sitting around a campfire type of storytelling. This guy is always learning and he cares about self-improvement, but he has a great time doing it. So I know that if you take anything out of this conversation, you'll get something valuable. As I say in this podcast, the narrator story is just as important. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with Dallas Britt. Dallas Britt.
Hello.
How's it going, man?
Going good. Coming to you live from the penthouse of my wife's basement.
I love it, man. Every time we've talked, it's the wife is the king and the queen, man. It's
Yeah, that's why I got the basement door blocked and barred right now. Otherwise, you'll find something else for me to do.
Right. That's fair.
People ask what's the hardest part about being a narrator is keeping my wife from making me do other stuff.
That's fair. That's cool, man. So how you doing? How you been?
I've been good. Been busy.
Yeah.
Trying to get things straight, get some more stuff going. Mm-hmm. Got some more auditions out there, and also got some good feedback this week that I was happy with.
Right on, man. Okay, so let's start this off with first. Let's introduce you. This is Dallas Britt, originally from North Carolina.
Originally from North Carolina, and got kidnapped by a crazy Wisconsin woman and moved north.
Yeah. And where are you at now? You're in Wisconsin, right?
Kaukauna, Wisconsin, on the other side of the pond from you.
Yeah, right on. Cool, man. Yeah, me being from Michigan. Let's kick this off, man. First off, what do you got going on right now? And
right now,
what got you started as a narrator?
All right. Well, what actually got me started as a narrator was while I was going to college, my late wife and I had a downstairs type place of a house, and the older couple that lived upstairs from us, her husband actually had what we all now call the closet studio, and that's what he did. That was part of his retirement. He stayed home and read books, and I just found it really neat and interesting and everything. And to get me to where I am now, I drive semi-trucks full time. I'm not far from retirement. Part of while I work is I'm in the truck long hours. I listen to audiobooks. I don't listen to stereo. I don't listen to radio. I'm not this news radio type person. I love listening to audiobooks. One of my favorite authors out there, Cap Daniels, I sent him a message, and we started sending messages back and forth, talking about his books and stuff like that. And I brought up one time that I've always wanted to do audiobooks and narrate audiobooks, and that was just in passing. And then one day he was like, well, why don't you do it? And I'm like, well, I work full time and everything. Goes, you do know there's people that do this part time on the weekends and stuff. I mean, nothing says you have to be a big, massive 40-hour book reader every day of the week. And so the long and the short of it, he eventually told me about ACX and Audible, and I looked at it and I was like, okay, and maybe I'll try this. But anybody who knows me, in fact, friends of mine that might watch this will tell you I'm the first person that they would tell you that loves to run his mouth. But not as much as running my mouth as I like to tell a story. I love telling stories and just stuff like that. And so now I'm a grandfather of 8 kids and 8 great grandkids. And so I look forward to telling them stories, and it just keeps going from there. So I went through, saw what it took, spoke to some people, got started doing it a little bit here and there. And now I'm up to this past week, I started sending out some letters to some of the bigger audiobook publishers and got feedback from 3 of them, getting added in. One I'm looking forward to when I get to narrate my first book with Brilliance Audio. They sent me a message saying that they would be glad to keep me in there, and looking for a book that I can do for them.
Yeah, man, that's great. That's super cool to hear, man. So
I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, that's kind of your first big.
That's my first major, what I consider major publisher out there.
Yeah.
Worked for a while with my coach and everything, and just recently it was like, "Hey, little bird, it's time to fly." Put his boot on my butt and said, "Jump!" So I'm like, okay, it's either sink or swim, fly or fall. So That's where I am right now.
Definitely. So tell me that process about, you getting interested in this. Tell me that process of the next step of, okay, I think I need a coach. Where did that come from? And why did you decide to just jump full into it? You know what I mean?
Well, I'm ADD ADHD, so whenever I do anything, I jump full into it. In fact, it's I guess you would say a curse, detriment, disease, however you want to put it.
Sure.
But the thing is with this, I like it because in this case, just like where you see I am right now, when I'm doing that, I don't get distracted. If I want to sit down and just read a book for myself, can't do it. Can't do it and never could do it. But to take a book and read somebody else's writing and turn it into an actual story or a movie in my head or however you want to put it, that's different and I enjoy it. So to get to where I am now, so like I said, I started with ACX and I started with the USB-C mic and took bits and pieces from people I'm reading on Facebook and this and that and that and this and started doing it. And then later on, as it progressed, I was like, okay. So I got with some people and I started doing my due diligence. How do I know this person knows what they're talking about? Okay. Earlier I was just listening to, oh, do this, oh, do this, oh, do this. And they're not trying to do anything wrong. It's just that's the way they thought about it. They knew it. I started looking at what does it really take to make a good sound booth. So I started looking and I'm like, okay, well, YouTube videos and like a lot of people do, but I started looking for patterns. I'm like, wait, a lot of them are using this. Lo and behold, I wound up getting in contact with a sound engineering company or an audio engineering company. Before I even bought anything, I had this gentleman saying, what are you trying to do? What size? What's your dimensions? And what's your email? And I gave him my email. And almost instantly, I look over and my email's dinging, and he's sending me, here's how you want to do it. You want to do this, you want to do this, you want to do this.
Yeah.
All right, now I have somebody to help me get a good sound booth room. Then I was like, okay, well, what about my recording? It came down to the DAW, which is a big topic. A lot of us, especially the ones that start off doing ACX, what's the first thing they grab? Audacity, all right? And Audacity's great, but then there's things in it that you can't do, that it's more difficult, especially like with punch and roll, which is like a minimum standard almost now for the audiobook industry. So I had to start looking for different ways as far as my editing goes. So I was like, okay, who can I learn from? And I was going back through and I kept seeing a name pop up, Roy Okelson. And I got in touch with him. Everybody kept saying he was it when it comes to Audacity, right, especially. And so after that, I was getting better recordings and I started getting book deals. The sound was there and everything, and it progressed.
Yeah.
But when I'm listening to other narrators, the big company narrators especially, I'm like, I want that sound like that. Right. And that's when you need a coach. You need a coach for multiple things. And it's not just to teach you how to read and get your voice straight and all that. Right. But it's also a mentoring is how to navigate the world of audiobook voice narration and voiceover. I started thinking, okay, where would I find a coach? And then I thought to myself, I said, who do I like? It goes back again to Cap Daniels and PJ Oakland. I sent him a message, one on Facebook, and then went to his actual website, Dr. Dialect, and because he does different types of coaching. So now I've developed a relationship with PJ Oakland, and he talks me through stuff, and so right. That's what it is. So got my sound booth, got my coach, got my audio people. The main thing is just learning where to go if I don't know it, which right now there's a lot of stuff out there I don't know. Yeah. I do know where to go and get the help. And that's the biggest part right now.
So talk to me about this, because you and I, we've become friends. You and I have developed a friendly relationship.
Came through your wife. Found you through your wife.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, because my wife, she proofs. So this has always been pretty interesting to me, and I would like to have you explain it more so. You clearly being from down south, right?
Yep. What gives that away?
I mean, you're in Wisconsin, but...
Man, I get looks, trust me.
Dude, that southern draw still sticks with you, right? Talk to me about that. With you working with PJ Oakland, clearly being from down south.
Yes.
How does PJ as a coach or you as a narrator and getting into this, what do you do to prepare your voice, your accent? How do you prepare that for a world of audiobooks? What was said? What's the mindset you have to get into?
That was honestly, that was the time that he talked me down off the ledge. Somebody that I was thinking about using as a coach came out and long and the short of it basically said, until I can get rid of my accent, that I wouldn't be marketable. PJ and I had already talked about what my goals were. So I shot him a message, and literally he called me back within 2 or 3 minutes and said, "What's up, Dallas?" And I told him what was said, and he goes, "Okay, you and I have talked about this." And I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Remember, yes, you're 54 years old. Okay, there's no way we're going to get rid of that accent. You and I have talked about it." And he said, "But what was our plan on that?" And I was like, "Well, we want to go with my strengths." And he goes, "All right, let me clarify this for you." He said, "We don't want to use your accent. We want to exploit the heck out of your accent."
Yeah.
And so what we do is, right now, pretty much when I get ready to read something, I do read the book, and when I'm pre-reading it, I don't get rid of my accent. In fact, a majority of the books that I've gotten so far are because of my accent. Yeah. Because I can read it, and the best way he puts it, and I love this, is I'm at my best when instead of having to think about being the character, I am the character. In other words, I can just relax and read and let that Southern work for me. Now, there are times where I can, if I pay attention to myself and I speak clearly and slower, I can somewhat get rid of the accent, or I can just go back to my roots and go back hillbilly. And so it's more or less learning how to know when to turn it up, when to turn it down, or when just relax and take it easy. There's a stigma of not being able to talk in what they call that general American accent, which means what? You have no accent.
No accent, yeah.
Think about it. How many books and stuff out there do you hear that have no accent?
Right.
Every character in there's got some kind of accent.
Something.
So it's just learning to work with it.
Yeah, man. That's great. That's why I wanted to touch on that a little bit, because, as listeners or viewers of this podcast hear different guests, I think that's honestly super important to hear, because most people have to have a generic voice. It's pretty refreshing to hear that, use your strengths. Your voice isn't going to go away. Your accent's not going to go away. Use what you have and make that shine. I think that's important.
And that's what somebody told me also, and it was one of the best things that I've heard, is that general American accent, that is when you're in competition with somebody else. Why? Because you're all sounding the same.
Yeah. So in all of this, getting a coach, diving headfirst into it, what inspires you, man? Like, what inspires you to keep doing this? What inspires you to want to do this? Everything above,
The biggest thing for me is the art of storytelling, where storytelling, for me, being from the South, is that old grandpa, that older grandfather type figure that you either see on the porch or down on Main Street sitting in front of the store, and they're talking about stories and history and stuff from the past.
Right.
What I strive to be, that I want to bring back the days of Mark Twain. Mark Twain was an awesome storyteller, but the thing is you wouldn't know he was telling a story.
Right.
I'd like to, as much as I can, keep the art of storytelling out there.
I love that, actually, you saying that. I do appreciate the fact of that old-time storytelling feeling. The fact that you're saying that you just would love the story to continue, that's one of the things that I honestly wholeheartedly appreciate the most. It's one of those things that I do get that vibe, especially from you, and I don't know if it's just your accent, but I get that feeling of an old-timey...
It's the Southern, it puts people at ease.
So with that, I mean, what are some of the things what are the different approaches that you take to your storytelling? What different approaches do you take to the different genres of books that you read? What different approaches do you take to the performance side of things?
Performance-wise, a person normally, if they're going to read a book to themselves, they just sit down, they open up the book, and they start reading. Unless it's a memoir or a biography or something like that, there's multiple characters. So the first thing that you have to do, or you should do, in my opinion, is read the book. You're not going to get it, and you're just going to start reading, blah, 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 and it's going to be cold, and you're going to get it cold from beginning to end, and wham, you're done. So as I'm reading the story, first off, I'm learning, I'm learning the voices, I'm learning the characters, I'm creating that character as if I was listening to it, because as I do it, I read it out loud, so that just like listening to an audiobook, I'm hearing it, and I'm starting to create that picture in my head.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for me, to make it easier for me, I basically take the manuscript and turn it into the second half of that, which is a script. I use highlighting, and what I do is, as I'm reading and I've created, Joe, all right, he's a gruff guy, so I'm going to use green for him. This lady here, I'm going to use pink for her. So as I go through, I assign colors to all the main characters, and I highlight everything they're saying in that way. As I'm reading and going down, I know, because I'm getting that visual cue, when I'm switching from here, I'm now going to this person here. Right. And it makes it easier for me to follow along and do that. And I basically just turn it into like an acting script from like you would in a movie or TV show.
Yeah.
And just go from there.
That's cool. That's cool. No, I think that's awesome, because you know what you have to do that works for, your brain capacity, whatever works for you, for your method. I think that's super important, because as I talk to more narrators, I've come to notice that everyone has a different approach, and it's pretty refreshing to hear that you, as a newer narrator, how many books have you done so far?
All right, let's see here. So on Audible right now, there's 3 there. I've done 3 others that are in are smaller type books that are under other platforms. And then some small meditative, faith-based type stuff. Altogether, I would say within the last year, I've done probably 10 projects so far.
Okay.
And I'm just starting one now for actually a friend of my wife's who's a author. I'm doing that book for her, which will be coming out pretty soon.
I think that's also a critical thing to point out, is the fact that you're also developing relationships outside of just getting into audiobooks and developing relationships with like publishers or just strictly doing the ACX thing. Do you see yourself getting into an area where you are only utilizing your voice and you're not trying to really attempt any other type of accents or other type of acting abilities? Do you kind of hold yourself back?
I still try, and I'll be working. And again, this is going back to PJ Oakland, Dr. Dialect. The last time, in fact, our last coaching session was, you're ready to go for this. Go for it. Do that. And one of the samples, even I had up on my sample page, and it was kind of funny because it was one of his. It was a sample off of Cap Daniels' book where PJ was the narrator.
Yeah.
And he said, this was okay because I knew it. He said, but if I didn't know this character was Russian, I might not have done that. I might have thought it was this or this. So he says, so don't put that out there as your strength right now, because it's not.
Right.
Go with these. These are your strengths. You're good here. You're good here. You're good here.
Right.
And we'll work on the rest. I'm not done with getting coaching from PJ Oakland. I'm going to keep continuing coaching with PJ no matter how many books I do, because there's always more to learn.
Right.
And the other good side to that is I'll also not only learn what I can do, but I'll also learn what I can't do.
Yeah.
And that's so like right now, yes, there's certain roles out there right now that later on I might try and do. But for right now, no, I won't do those. I can, even though a character in the audition may not be Russian, I will try or do a custom audition. I'll try and do the accent and let them know if this works for you, if this is good for you. If it's not, I stay away from it.
Yeah, that makes sense, man. So now I'm curious about this. When you got wrapped up into all of this, and granted, you're already a great storyteller, you've been told about that for years. Talk to me about some of the self-engineering side of things. What were some of your struggles? And then what were some of the things that you had to overcome on the audio side of that aspect?
Okay. Again, going back to being in college, when I was in college for this, we didn't work with this thing over here. It wasn't using mouse clicks and everything. We were working with reel-to-reel this big and splicing it together.
Reel-to-reel tape, 2-inch
Reel-to-reel tape,
inch, right?
Exactly. So learning the computer side of it. Now, yes, I'm computer literate. Am I a whiz kid? No, I'm what they call I know just enough about computers to be dangerous.
Sure.
But so learning, simply put, I kept seeing it pop up. What DAW are you using? What DAW are you using? What DAW are you using? And I'm like, what the hell is a DAW?
Yeah.
And so, learning that, but like a lot of people, I jumped in with Audacity. Why? Because it's free. And I started going through, and I'm like, okay, I can deal with this. But then I'm listening to the product that I was putting out, and I'm like, it's not, to me, it wasn't quite there, wasn't quite right.
Wasn't up to spec.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I could make it pass ACX standards, but there was other stuff. There was artifact in there, stuff that I couldn't get rid of. And so learning how to do that, or wanting to learn how to do that, that's the point when I got into the ACX narrator group. I was asking the question, and that's when they said, well, what are you using? And I said, well, I'm using Audacity. And the first thing that pops up is, and this is nothing against the Audacity. Like I said, it's got its good points, bad points, just like every other DAW out there.
Every DAW has something.
Every DAW has that.
Exactly.
But then somebody did the same thing that I'm doing now, which is said, go with Adobe Audition and call Uncle Roy.
Yeah.
Literally, in the same sentence. Get Adobe Audition, call Uncle Roy.
Right.
So I actually did it sort of backwards. I contacted Uncle Roy and got Adobe Audition because Uncle Roy said, you do this, we'll fix this.
Yeah.
And the reason it made that much of a difference to me is I got to him when I was having trouble with a book that I was trying to get delivered. And he said, we'll deal with getting you set up later to fix things. First, let's fix the problem you have now. I was having volume match issues.
Okay. Yeah.
And he said, it's not going to be perfect because here's what you're working with, but we can get it close. He said, it's either that or you go back and re-record everything all over again.
I want to touch on that a little bit. So volume match issues on what specifically though? So like when you need to put in pickups or?
Pickups. When I was doing corrections.
Yeah.
And my new sound, my new levels were different than my old levels, and trying to get them to match close. And in that, I learned you've got to know when to ask for help. And right behind that is when I first started talking with PJ Oakland. Right. And the first thing out of his mouth was, so with your punch and roll, and I'm like, excuse me? Well, and he said, what? I said, what's punch and roll?
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. And he explained it to me. He said, you're wanting to get with the big publishers. Here's what they're going to be expecting. And here's what it will do for you. Now, I wouldn't go away from punch and roll now to save my life, because before I was using the old clicker method. Yeah. I'd be narrating, Eric click, Eric click, and I'd go through, I'd narrate everything, and then I'd have to come back and spend another 2 hours on 1 hour's worth of audio trying to get rid of the stuff I'm not using and then get everything else to match up.
Right. So that's already kind of a win, and that's the one thing I wanted to ask you next was, tell me about some of your wins that you'll take, no matter how small they are, to some of your fails. And it already sounds like you've had a good amount of wins, because the way
I'm more fails.
Yeah, I'm sure you've had plenty of fails, as anyone does when they're first starting out. But as I talk to you more and more, it just sounds like everything that could have been a fail or is a fail, quote unquote, you've always been able to turn it around into a positive. So it basically turns into a win. So talk to me about some of those, man. I'm kind of curious about that.
I'd have to say, as far as wins go, now it was a review that somebody did on a recent book that I did called Terror in Texas. Another thing that I learned from PJ on this is, when it comes to reviews, is ignore the bad ones and take the good ones.
Yeah.
He said, you're never going to please everybody. You might have 10 people out here who think this is great, but then there's that one person, it just doesn't suit them right. There's something in with me, or whether it be, there's something that person doesn't like. Just like this past week with Brilliance Audio. I was like, okay, am I really going to do this? Because I've always felt you only get one shot to make a good impression.
Right.
And if you send them something bad, no matter, you can send them 5 good ones after it, but that one bad one that you send them at the front is going to knock you out of the running. So I was like really hesitant on doing it. Let's hope it's good enough. And because I was getting my samples ready.
Right.
And I said, all right, let's do this. And I sent it out with a few others, and Brilliance was the first one to come back. And I was really expecting that the standard, yes, we got your samples, but at this time we're not taking auditions for new talent. Right. In other words, don't call us, we'll call you type thing. But when they sent me back, said that they liked what they heard and that they would be glad to keep me in mind for works of my narrating capabilities. So that's what so now I'm sitting here hoping and waiting on that. And
so it's basically that whole, what do they call that? The elevator pitch, right? You only have about 15 seconds.
Give me the 30-second pitch. Yep.
Yeah, give me a 30-second pitch. And to your point, I mean, a lot of it can be that. But hey, man, it sounds like you're putting the best foot forward to make sure that best impression
Yeah.
lands for sure. So what are some, we'll call them funny situations, that you've had to be in while you're either narrating or while you're getting set up, the whole journey? What are some,
Honestly,
some things that come to mind?
the very first book I ever narrated.
What was going on there?
I'll spill it because I'm sure she knows it. It's called The Art of Human Hunting.
Oh,
and
that's
it's in the
interesting.
it's in the extreme horror graphic division.
Okay, perfect.
And there were times where I'm sitting here, he's sneaking through the woods. He's coming up behind him, and all of a sudden, what the crap did she just say? Yeah. Where I literally had to stop, go back, because I'm like, did she really? He did what?
Right. Taking off your glasses to see
I'm
what's
like,
going on. What?
Okay. It's just literally out of left field. So there's no telling what you come across. Just the little blooper type stuff. But I have had the times where I've literally had to just get up, walk out, didn't even shut the computer down, didn't even do nothing. My wife hears me upstairs. She goes, what in the world's going on with you? Because I'm walking around in the basement going, I can't, because I'm just making all kinds of weird ass noises because I could not say shoelace or something. Just the simplest thing out there. And you're like, okay, I've totally forgotten how to speak.
Right. It's so mind-blowing, right?
Yep.
You get into that groove. So I know that you're newer to narrating.
Yes.
You've been doing it for a little bit, but for the general population, the public to hear this, I think it's kind of important. You don't have to get specific on numbers at all. How often do you have to read each day to where you'll have to turn a profit? What's the work that you have to put into that?
There's a lot of work that you have to put into it. It's hard to answer the question about how much I have to read to turn a profit for two reasons. One, right now, I don't have to do this to put food on my table.
Right.
Okay. I still have to do something to progress myself. Even though I might not be reading or narrating a book Monday through Friday for somebody, 10, 12 hours a day at work, because I'm in a truck, I'm listening the whole time. I'm still learning I'm still working with my audiobooks because I'm listening and learning in my head. I'll come into here. I'll look, I'll see what auditions are out there, see if there's something new. I might record an audition and I'll put it out there. So every day I'm doing something.
There's always a learning.
There's always a learning process in there.
Yeah,
and then
cool.
The weekends, from the time I get off work Friday morning till the time I go to bed Sunday night, here's where I am. I'm in the booth.
So you're always, no matter what, once you're getting off of your day job and you've got, whatever family things you got going on, and even at your age, this is the point I want to give you credit on this, man, that even at your age, it's that saying of you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? Well, clearly, you're trying to do something even at your age where you're still always, and granted, this might be your personality too, which I think is awesome. You're still trying to always learn something, process something, admit when you don't know how to do something, and still turn that around to better yourself, and almost like just really, really good self-improvement.
Yep. The one thing, and the saying, like you said, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, guess what? I'm an old dog, and I'm trying to learn a trick other than playing dead.
Sure.
And you cannot say you cannot do something or I can't do this until you've exhausted all means to learn how to do it. Once you've exhausted all those means, then you can say you can't do it. And with this, I'm still going through all my means. And so far, I haven't found anything to tell me, hey, you can't do this. So,
yeah, I think that's awesome, man. I mean, I've in getting to know you more and talking with you as much as we do, I've kind of noticed that you do have a really big drive behind you that is, and whether it's the Southern thing or not, I'm not going to even talk about that because I think it's also just your personality. It's just the way that you are and I think this is important for most people that even if they don't have that same personality as you do, where don't let anyone hold you back. And I really do appreciate, I know we've talked about this already, but I really do appreciate the fact that, PJ Oakland's telling you, well, hey, at your age and with your strong of an accent as you have, rather than saying, oh, we can't help you, it's no, let's use that as a strength.
Yes.
I think that's awesome. I think that's super perfect. So to wrap it up here, man, what are some of, what is the dream job? What's the dream book, genre, author? We talked about this last night, man.
You're setting me up on this one.
Oh, because I know. Well, hey, we were talking about this, right? And,
yeah.
and I know that this was one thing that you definitely fell in love with. So I'm asking you directly.
I have two.
You have two. Okay.
I have two. One, because it's not out there, and that is a book written by the late Richard Thorpe, called Cotton Mill Cowboys and Other Interesting Characters I've Known. The reason I really want to do that book, and I'm trying to get with the only living relative now is his son, and trying to see if I can't do something with him to allow me to do that book, because one, it's going back to that time of advancing your family history and your culture through storytelling.
Yeah.
It was Richard Thorpe's life growing up in what's called in the cotton mill area. But the thing is that's where my mother's from. They are from the same town. It's about the town that she's from when it was coming up. And like I said, that's a dying art form. They call it folk tales. Well, guess what? You don't have many people writing folk tales nowadays.
Right.
They're not talking about this and that while they were growing up. They might talk about it, but you don't have people writing about it, and you don't have that existing story like Mark Twain with his writings and coming up. It was a reflection of that time and that era. Well, the same with this book, but the main reason with that is I can relate to that because that's where my family, that's where my personal history comes from. But the ultimate setup, you got me. Yes, I have a dream book, if it ever happens, is if Cap Daniels ever does write a standalone book for a character he has called Singer. And yes, I put in my threats to PJ Oakland that I told him I would tie him up, gag him, and throw him in a closet to be able to narrate that book if it ever came out.
Right. Yeah.
And Cap came back one day because I told him about it, and he said, PJ might fight you on that one. I said, I've already told him what I'd do to him.
This is why I wanted to bring it up, man, because when we talked about it last night.
If you ever listen to the book and you get Singer, you'll know why. When you hear it, it's a character that in Cap's latest book, Singer had a change, or there was a change during that book, and it brought it out, and I just finally had to say something out open on a review that I did for it about how these characters, not just how Cap wrote it, but how PJ Oakland portrayed it. So PJ Oakland's narration of what Cap wrote, it just hit that nerve, and that's what we're all out there trying to do.
Yeah,
and
that makes sense.
that's why that would be my dream one, is Singer from Cap Daniels.
Yeah, makes sense, man. So my last thing I got for you is let people know what you've got going on right now, narration-wise.
Okay.
What's the next step for you? Where can people find you?
Okay. Well, the easy version of where they can find me is dallasbritt.com. I'm also on Facebook. I joke around in TikTok sometimes with other narrators. We do stuff in there, and we're all acting up in there. But as far as the books go, you can find me on Audible. I'm working on now trying to get my first book in, with Find Away Voices, going through there.
Yeah.
You can find me on there if there's an author out there looking, and especially if they want that Southern gentleman. Find me, Dallas Britt, on Find Away Voices. Hopefully soon you'll find me with the Brilliance logo above me.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, man, thank you again.
Thank you
for doing this with me. I appreciate it, brother. It's always good to talk to you.
You too, man. Talk to you later.
My dude, Dallas. What a good time that was. And I hope that by this interview and others that I've had, that you're getting the sense that the art of storytelling is important and it needs to be shared. So if you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to the podcast so you won't miss any more tips, tricks, and guidance from these amazing narrators. And if you're still doing it all yourself, then remember, I want to help you with the mastering phase of your narration. So head to thehomeaudioproject.com/EQ and pick up my narration EQ guide. Thanks again so much for listening or watching if you're on YouTube. And we will see you in another episode of the Home Audio Podcast real soon.